Hello and welcome to Zgermanguy Reviews. I'm Zgermanguy. Marc-Uwe Kling is the author of a series of books called The Kangaroo and then something, Chronicles, Revelations or Apocrypha. Look it up. The book series started out as a cult classic among university students in public readings for its witty, polemic and leftist humor. And of course, as we all know, the reason for the persistence of left-wing culture among higher education is because there's a vast conspiracy systematically rooting out every conservative thinking. And not because that if you learn a little bit about history, science and develop a little bit critical thinking, you will simply end up with the same conclusions. It's only because of a decades-long leftist secret conspiracy that conservatism isn't appreciated as much as it should. Having to create its own fake universities and pseudo-news networks and using pseudo-science, thereby creating a feedback loop of bullshit which makes it not only probable that the right will turn into a deranged suicide cult, but inevitable. But hey, I never went to university. I only watch people who did and do fact-checking on Google when right-wingers open up their mouth. Which I have been told is foolish because, and I quote, "Oh yeah, those totally unbiased leftist fact-checkers." Where I have to ask, why would massive companies like Google or Facebook specifically go out of their way to hire left activists? Do they get like government subsidies from the deep state? What is the incentive here? Maybe, my dude, instead of explaining everything away with a conspiracy, maybe when scientists, academics and fact-checkers all disagree with you most of the time, maybe it's time to re-evaluate the validity of your worldview. Anyway, the first book in the Kangaroo series, unlike later entries, is a collection of short stories where the kangaroo is basically running around and pissing off various kinds of people, with barely a cohesive narrative. So I'm curious how they want to pull this off. So without further delay, let's start a revolution. The movie begins with the Warner Bros. Logo and a short troll moment, where the author and his animal pal let us think that the commentary has been turned on, which it actually hasn't. I could laugh more about this if my VLC player on my PC wasn't such a bitch and wouldn't take 5 minutes to restart again. We are introduced to one of the main components of the series, the constant bickering between the author and the kangaroo, who, right now, can't decide when the perfect time is to tell their story. First they begin somewhere in the middle, then at a big bang, but ultimately they figure, no, the beginning is a good beginning. But don't worry, Marc-Uwe, or more precisely the guy that plays the author, shots the two up. To answer your question, yes, when you actually do put on the commentary, they will say at this moment, "Psych! We are still here." I guess they kind of attempting some sort of the Hex level of fourth wall breaking.
Fourth wall break inside a fourth wall break. That's like 16 walls.
Anyhow, the doorbell rings. It's the kangaroo saying he wanted to bake a cake, but he forgot to buy eggs. The Australian, after inviting himself in and deciding to live with the author suffering from migraines that are about to increase by 1,000-fold, reveals he is a pretty hardcore tanky. For all of you who are not familiar with online political slang, he is a communist, but not one that admits that a lot of things have gone wrong in the past that should not be repeated, but one whose response is, "What in the thong-wearing cocky monster are you talking about? Hashtag Stalin did nothing wrong."
Ich bin Anarchist. Genieße ich dann. Anarchist.
Cool. Dann können wir Freunde sein bis zur Revolution. Danach wird's natürlich schwierig.
It is often said by Americans that Germans don't have humor. This is a misconception stemming from the fact that our jokes are intelligent. The police shows up, because the kangaroo is not just someone who posts angry stuff on Reddit, but puts his money where his mouth is. Obviously he does. I mean, how are we ever going to live in a cashless society if we don't get rid of all that paper first? We get a little song, seeing a little montage of the kangaroo in its natural habitat, being an all-around prankster, and a frenemyship between Mark and a wild animal develops. Flash forward by 1 year, and the boots of capitalism once again come down on the general population. A nationalist real estate developer turned politician wants to tear down large portions of the city, to replace them with butt-ugly, unappealing condos for the ultra-wealthy, achieving this by bringing people to go into a patriotic frenzy. It's almost like as if impotent rage makes someone a perfect tool or something. Our two heroes get into a skirmish with some Nazis after the kangaroo did some Olympic sports with their dog. They get cornered, but they manage to confuse them for a few seconds with one of fascism's greatest enemies. Factual statistics. Mark and friend trick the dumbasses into crashing the car of the real estate mogul. In the process, we see that a bunny paw given to the moneybags by his father, which has the same history as the watch from Pulp Fiction did, got taken by the kangaroo. Later in a bar, the wife of the populist shows up, screwing up the baby in her belly before it is even born by chugging down a beer with vodka. Well, you do have to somehow create the right mindset if you want to continue the political legacy. She searches for the paw, but nobody has seen or heard anything. She threatens them with dire consequences and leaves. Afterwards, the kangaroo decides to start a movement. Something he is particularly good at. In one of the books it said that he was the singular cause of the Arab Spring. This radical new movement specializes in a very specific brand of activism, anti-terrorism, which essentially means doing protests and having fun with it. For instance, you go to a McDonald's and upset the system by insisting on getting a Whopper. Basically, you are a Karen, but self-aware. The capitalist sees the red menace on TV having his accessoire and sends the Nazis, who ended up in his employment, to his home. On that same note, for all Americans watching right now, if you ever encounter someone who tells you with a straight face that the Nazis were socialists, you can ignore everything that person tells you forever, because believing that the Nazis were socialists is the political equivalent of being a flat earther. That being said, for some reason I really find this voice more funny than I should.
Wo ist die Hasenpfote?
Was?
Die Hasenpfote. Die verdammte Hasenpfote.
They pee on the carpet, then beat the shit out of them, until they can't take it anymore and give the paw back. However, the duo is not just accepting defeat, and they walk straight up to the man in his tower with the pea carpet in hand, demanding compensation. Richie McDouchey Rich, however, tells them bluntly he doesn't care, and adds to that the reason why he builds his little prestige project in the middle of their city, to set a symbol against the multicultural degenerate order. Hey, whoa, don't shoot all your ammunition all at once, or you won't have anything later to say on Twitter, given that nationalists only have 2 talking points, the other one being, they get over the border. The resistance has to wait, however, as Mark Uwe has his eyes set on an upstairs neighbor. He says hello with the pretext that he wants to bake a cake, but forgot he has no eggs.
It's a piece of cake to bake a pretty cake. If the way is hazy, you gotta do the cooking by the book. You know you can't be lazy.
And yeah, you won't get this, so let me quickly explain. The way in which he phrased this sounded like as if he has no balls.
Because I've swallowed just about as much as I can take from you.
Hey, phrasing!
Yeah, having balls when cooking is important. Don't want to be a beta male. How in the fresh vegetables did it ever get important in the US discourse what kind of man someone is? Sure, I believe that a lot of, if not most of these nutjob fanatic types are deep down very insecure and neurotic, and that's why they believe this crap, because it gives them a sense of power. But just because someone appears weak in the traditional sense, why is that alone a reason to disagree with someone and not actually look at their policies? What I'm trying to say is this whole sorting people into different categories of beta, alpha and sigma male stuff has some very tribal, pre-civilizational vibes to it. So what if someone is a geek-looking soy boy with zero muscles and neon pink hair? What kind of millennium are you from? 10,000 BC? Then again, this does make perfect sense considering what kind of society America is progressing towards with the tempo of a high-speed train. Back to the story. The author visits his shrink, who thinks he is cuckoo because he tells him he is living with a talking kangaroo. Which raises a few questions, like, if he thinks that's crazy, why is no one else amazed with the intelligent kangaroo that they all see and interact with? Whatever, the point is, the real estate developer, going by the name Dwix, is also visiting the same head doctor, and Mark-Uwe gets him drunk to find something he can use against him. Which he does. Apparently, the entire building project was shady from the start, which is why he goes to his neighbor asking her to hack his computer, and she delivers without a question the best line of the movie.
Du glaubst, auf dem Desktop von Dwix liegt ein Ordner namens Top Secret und da drin ist eine Datei namens belastendes Dokument.pdf, oder wie?
It does so in all the spy movies. But they go with that plan anyway, appearing as guests at a party of Herrn Dwix, where they try to distract the guests with small talk in order to get their hands on a computer. And we get a perfect depiction of the type of assholes right-wing nationalists are. Sure, when we think nationalists, we usually think of toothless trailer park methods with shit for brains. But there's also loaded shit for brains narcissists, complaining how they are being pushed to the margins of society by the gays and the Muslims. Great replacement this, higher taxes equal communism dead. How it is almost impossible to breathe with all that pressure. Just the purest privileged white entitlement. But enough scenes from the Republican convention. Back to the story. The small-time artist creates a distraction by singing an anti-Nazi song that for some reason the crowd doesn't like. Meanwhile, the data on the PC is copied to an USB drive, but the kangaroo drunk off his ass wants to top it all off and ruins yet another car / symbol of obscene inequality. They end up in front of a judge, but because the kangaroo is, well, an animal, the only one screwed is the author man. After a few awkward attempts by his roommate to get him out of prison, Mark-Uwe ultimately gets freed by his neighbor, bailing him out. The writer then makes it clear that he is done supporting the kangaroo and his plans, given that every single time he is the one who gets the end of the stick for it. The entire neighborhood then makes one final assault. On the day the building project is supposed to officially start, they want to expose Herrn Dwix. The data on the PC, however, turned out to deliver no hard evidence. So it is decided, why not use the alt-right tactics against them? Which is, just get up on the podium and make shit up on the spot. They get into the event, but the kangaroo is stung by a tranquilizer dart. So Mark-Uwe, rediscovering his sense for justice, gets up on stage and tells the collection of nationalists from across the globe who gave funding for this project that they are all being lied to. The entire building is literally built on sand and corners have been cut everywhere. To emphasize this point, his hacker friend uses the laser technology that was meant to show how the finished skyscraper will look like to make the phallic symbol lose its hot air. Hey, at the end of the day, it exactly comes down to this. These people are very insecure about their private parts. And I am not even kidding here. In Mein Kampf, Hitler was complaining that all the white women are being seduced by the animalistic powers of the blacks, due to them having larger willies than them. And let's not even mention their creepy obsession with birth rates. It's all just based on the most basic primal fears. Also, everything that the author claimed in his speech is confirmed by the populist attacking him angrily on stage. Later, everyone is dancing to celebrate their victory, but Herr Dwix once more sends out his minions to get back his bunny paw that the kangaroo had stolen during the other party. Mark-Uwe just wants to get this over with and give it back, but the kangaroo doesn't, and so they fight over it, revealing that the paw doesn't have sentimental value but is actually a USB stick, most likely containing actual evidence of wrongdoing. A battle erupts, the kangaroo turning into Roger from Tekken. Also Bud Spencer and Terence Hill cameo. Because why not? During the fight, the encrypted data gets deciphered and sent out to the press. Drix then gets on a bulldozer, trying to take down everyone with him. But the kangaroo and friend save the day and crush car number 3. The police arrives and then the kangaroo does me a solid and saves some time by skipping over the "now all bad guys are being arrested" scene. When it looks like Uwe is finally asking his neighbor out, he only manages to say, "See you around." And so the movie ends with the two friends walking into the sunset, remarking how very cliché this is. And that was the Kangaroo Chronicles. It's fine. I was at first expecting that this movie would derail into a bunch of unnecessary side plots that go nowhere. But no, I was pleasantly surprised. Aside from the attempted romance that goes nowhere on purpose to drive the point home how the author is getting punched in the balls by life all the time. But they had to invent a lot of stuff that wasn't in the book to come up with 89 minutes of movie. Though I would have liked a quick montage of some of the short stories at the point in the film where the kangaroo starts his protest movement, to be honest. It would have even perfectly fit in, but it's too late to change that now. The story itself is the typical David against Goliath thing that has been done a million times by 80s kids movies, down to the nasty criminal real estate developer. The only difference being that it adds some political spice to the whole thing that's just for people who already have left-wing affinity beforehand. The book series and the public readings of it, of which I have the audio CD, goes into much more humoristic details to the hows and whys of a lot of things, giving a much larger picture than just this individual bad. And in that way points out the flaws within the system that need to be resolved, as that is what creates these things in the first place. The leftiness feels more like an afterthought and not a centerpiece, as it should be. But, you can never say fuck the Nazis enough. To the movie's credit, a big flaw of the books is that it gets a bit too preachy and too self-important at times. Which at times got so bad that I was sitting in my car going, "Oh my god, shut the fuck up!" And I agree with most of this shit. Thankfully, it keeps that to a minimum in the film, because some of the stuff in the book, in retrospect, is really awful. Like the author's absolutely shitty simplistic views of faith and religion. Just the most lowbrow Facebook teenager new atheist crap that I can read for free and don't have to pay 15 euros for. Stuff that has greatly contributed to the new rise of fascism, as a lot of those that were once new atheist kiddies turned into anti-social justice warriors or just alt-right assholes after they had to accept that nobody cares for their movement anymore. And just all around awful attitudes online. Of course, let me defuse the situation before it has any chance to blow up. This isn't the case with everyone, and most of them have over the years developed a more nuanced view of the world. Be that as it may, back to the film. It's mediocre. Some of the jokes are really laugh out loud funny, and others I don't have any reaction at all. Maybe it's because when you read or hear the stories, it's because automatically you think it's more funny just by imagining the situation. A very big problem is the moment with the kangaroo making a joke that after the revolution their friendship will be problematic, referencing how anarchists were all killed, is the only joke that was the same type of cleverness that mostly can be found in the books. The books, when they were good because the reader/listener was required to have knowledge about history and philosophy. Though, of course, if you don't possess that knowledge, then you would just come out confused. Sometimes it was an absolute miss, but when it hit good. It's all a more or less dumbed down version of the story for movie-going audiences. And yes, I'm an annoying douchebag for being the type of person that always goes, "Well, the book was better." Yes, but I wouldn't say it if it wasn't true. Anyway, The story is still galaxies more intelligent than the average comedy movie from Hollywood. So if you are in the mood for some German comedy, give it a look. Zgermanguy out and auf Wiedersehen.